Number 1.
April Rose Zane, age 17, disappeared after leaving her Frankfort, Illinois home on Easter Sunday, April 18, 1977. This date also happened to be her father's birthday. April's family had previously lived in the Roseland area of Chicago, but had moved to rural Frankfort 6 years prior to her disappearance. April did not adapt well to rural life and frequently traveled to Chicago to visit her friends. During these trips, April would often hitchhike and sometimes would be picked up by law enforcement for being out past curfew. Aside from this, April did not have any issues beyond the normal teenage problems. On the day of April's disappearance, the family went to April's grandmother's home to wish her a happy Easter, then returned home to prepare for a birthday celebration for April's father. April wanted to go to another Chicago suburb to see her friend Sandy, and her parents had given permission to bring Sandy back with her to participate in the birthday event for her father. April's younger sister recalled standing at the top of the stairs, asking April if she could go with her, and April saying no, but that she would be back. Then she walked out the door and was never seen by family again. She is known to have contacted Sandy from a payphone after leaving her house. I do not know if April indicated to Sandy where she was at the time or what time this call was, which could indicate how far she might have gotten by that point. This, in my opinion, is a critical piece of the puzzle that is missing, as it establishes her last confirmed time and location. It is known that during this call, Sandy told April that she could not go out that day, due to it being Easter Sunday. Prior to her disappearance, according to April's younger sister, April had often babysat for the children of her older sisters, who were married and lived nearby. April had also expressed an interest in moving in with one of them. Her older sisters were said to associate with drug users, and one of the drug dealers had suggested she move in with him, but wanted to her push pills in exchange for his hospitality. At one point, April turned in several of the drug dealers associated with her sisters. April's report resulted in arrests, and April feared retaliation. According to family, April's mother would often see a dark-colored car sitting outside their home. She would call police, but the car would always be gone by the time police arrived. Due to these concerns, April had gone to live with her grandmother for a while, but had listed her address as a homeless shelter in order to avoid being tracked down. According to Sharon, April's younger sister, their older sisters did not make any effort to locate April after her disappearance. In fact, one of them told Sharon she was going to put a stop to Sharon's attempts to publicize April's case. One of them, it turned out, had never told her husband that April was missing. Sharon believes that one or both of them may have known something about her disappearance. One of them is deceased. Police refuse to question them, according to Sharon. April's family has had great difficulty in getting law enforcement to actively investigate April's case. In the beginning, no police report was created, although some officers did assist in searching nearby areas for April. As time has gone on, Sharon has found that the case is rarely even looked at, and that tips she has passed along have not been followed up on. This is another reason I think it would be important to know exactly where April made this phone call to Sandy from. If it can be established that April was in another town at that point, there is a possibility of having her case moved to a different jurisdiction. I also wonder if the identities of the drug dealers that April turned in are known. It's been a long time, perhaps one of them has turned their life around, has a family of their own now, and might be willing to talk now. Even if they don't know exactly what happened to April, they might be able to identify the owner of the car that would park in front of April's house. Sharon has an idea of where April's remains may be. She states that the location is no longer accessible by foot or by car, but that at the time of her disappearance, it was a known shortcut. The vicinity has changed since then due to the building of roads. I hope this area can be searched. April has been declared dead, but her younger sister continues to search for her. Note: although all official sources list her as missing since April 18, 1977, her sister strongly believes that it occurred on the same date of 1976. This is due to the fact that she remembers it being Easter Sunday, as well as their father's birthday, which was April 18. This date fell on a Monday in 1977, but was Easter Sunday in 1976.
Number 2.
Christine was last seen leaving her family's home on Greenway Avenue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at 8 a.m. on April 23, 1985. She was supposed to catch the Woodland Avenue trolley and go to Bartram High School for the day's classes, but never arrived. Christine has never been seen again. Christine had a kidney removed a year prior and as a result may have been in need of medication. Christine may have been pregnant at the time of her disappearance. In December of that year, another Bartram High School student was reported missing. Alan Briscoe, also age 16, was last seen by his mother on the night of December 12, 1985. The following morning, his mother went to work and as was her usual routine, she called home at 7:30 a.m. to be sure Alan and his sister were up and getting ready for school. On this day, the 13th, nobody answered when she called. She tried calling again that afternoon at 3:30 p.m. when she expected they would be home from school, but she still got no answer. Due to her working multiple jobs, she was not home until 11:30 p.m. She found her daughter there, but Alan was nowhere to be found. Her daughter said she had been at her grandmother's house as Alan had the house key and she was therefore locked out. She had only gotten there a half hour before her mother. Alan was reportedly at school during some point during the day. According to school officials, however, Alan's mother does not believe he ever arrived at school that day. I would guess this is based on the fact that his sister also attended Bartram High and probably stated he was not with her when she went to school. A friend of Alan's reported having been with Alan that day. He stated that they rode around the city on the subway that day. He last saw Alan getting off the bus at Woodland Avenue in the Briscoe's neighborhood. Alan had told him he was going to go visit a female friend. It's hard to ignore the fact that these two black teens, both 16, from the same high school, mysteriously vanished the same year. It's also hard to see that Christine may have been pregnant and Alan was going to see a female friend without considering the possibility that the cases may be connected. I have not seen any evidence that Christine and Alan even knew each other, though. Alan's mother suspects that another boy in the neighborhood may have been involved in Alan's disappearance. She stated that he had come to the house to see Alan and that she had warned her son to keep his distance from this individual, who has not been named. Both teens left all their belongings behind. Alan had received cash for his birthday and it was left at home. Obviously lots of questions here. Did Alan and Christine know each other? Did they belong to the same circle of friends? Is there any possibility that they were involved? Did Alan's sister see him in the morning of December 13? When and where did she last see him? Did he specify who he was planning to go see when he got off the bus? It seems odd to me that he would say he was going to go visit a female friend who says I'm going to visit a female friend. The boy in the neighborhood who Alan's mother was suspicious of, did Christine know him? Did anyone see Christine on the trolley that morning? Christine's mother passed away less than 6 months after her disappearance and had been bedridden when she vanished. I hope both of these kids can be found.
Number 3.
Cheryl Tilingist, age 17, disappeared from Passaic, New York on September 24, 1973. Cheryl had lived with her mother and several siblings in a mobile home. She was a caretaker to her younger siblings, as their mother struggled with alcoholism and was reportedly abusive. She had a strained relationship with her mother, but by all accounts, adored her siblings. At some point, Cheryl was detained by police for marijuana possession and was sent to a reform school. Following a fire at the reform school, she was transferred to Passaic State School, which was a combination of a mental institution and a boarding school for delinquent youth. Once Cheryl completed a required stay at the school, she didn't particularly want to return home. She accepted employment at the school, working in the laundry area. She lived in an apartment nearby. During the time that Cheryl was employed there, she had remained in contact with her family. She had even written a letter to a judge in her hometown and requested a welfare check on her siblings, as she was concerned for their safety. She also wrote a letter to one of her siblings just prior to her disappearance. She had stated in the letter that she had gotten a car and had discussed plans for both of them to move to California. She also said she planned to come home to visit for her mother's upcoming birthday. Her family contacted the school when her mother's birthday came and went with no word from Cheryl. Her mother was told by the school that Cheryl was an adult and that she didn't want to come home. Due to the strained relationship, her mother accepted this explanation and though hurt, she did not pursue it any further at the time. Cheryl was not officially reported missing as a result. In the ensuing years, Cheryl's mother died and her siblings began trying to figure out what had happened to Cheryl. They learned that no report had been filed. Investigation into her disappearance revealed that Cheryl likely had a boyfriend who also worked at Passaic State School. It is believed that there was domestic abuse involved in their relationship, as a counselor at the school reported that she had seen bruises on Cheryl. Cheryl had also called police, reporting that she had been assaulted by the possible boyfriend, who was an older man also working for the school. He was arrested and arraigned, but a relative bailed him out. His trial was scheduled for October 1973, but Cheryl vanished in September. Cheryl left her last 2 paychecks behind, as well as all of her belongings. It doesn't appear that her car was found, although there is some question as to whether the car actually existed. Passaic State School is now closed, and as far as I can tell, the site is not currently occupied. There is much speculation that she never left the school, but I think an assumption has been made by many that she lived on the grounds, and I believe she did not. She only worked there at the time of her disappearance. Is anyone out there a former student or employee of this school? Were you there in the 1970s? Do you remember anything about Cheryl? Her family really needs answers.
Number 4.
Angela Rader and Tammy Akers, both age 14, disappeared from Roanoke, Virginia on February 7, 1977. Some reports state that the two girls were dropped off at school by one of their relatives and were never seen again. Other reports state that Tammy had told her mother she was going to meet Angela Rader and they disappeared. Tammy and Angela had run away together a time or two in the past, so initially it was not such a big concern. But this time proved different. Tammy, for several years, had been associating with a man named Earl Bramblett. His father, who was known as Old Man Bramblett, had a silkscreen printing shop down the block from where Tammy lived. Tammy had been given permission to help out in the shop with cleaning and odd jobs to earn a bit of pocket money. Earl Bramblett was often at the shop also and took a liking to Tammy. It was not known at this time that he was a pedophile. Tammy often accompanied Earl and his family on outings and would spend the night at their home. He would give her gifts on a regular basis and she believed that he loved her. Tammy's older sister would be present on some of the outings and reports that she was fondled by Earl Bramblett on multiple occasions. Her attempts to report this were not taken seriously and she was told that she was just jealous of her youngest sister. Following Tammy's disappearance, Earl Bramblett had a group of juveniles in his basement when out of the blue, he went crazy and started sobbing, saying he wished he hadn't hurt Tammy and that he loved her. He then pulled a gun and fired shots into the walls. This incident was reported to police and the bullets were found where the juvenile witnesses said they would be. Later, Earl Bramblett was convicted of killing the Hodges, a family of 4, who he had been boarding with at the time. The family consisted of a husband, wife, and 2 daughters. It is believed that he murdered the family because they had caught on to his sexual desires of the older daughter. He was executed by the state of Virginia and never revealed what he might have known about Tammy and Angela's disappearance. Prior to Bramblett's execution, he has stated that Tammy and Angela died in a bonfire in Florida and that the police know all about it. How does one die in a bonfire? I asked myself. But then I figured out what he was referring to. I don't agree with his theory, but will still briefly explain it. There was a girl who was killed, then burned in a fire, at a party spot in rural Pasco County, Florida in 1979. According to witnesses, they did not know the girl personally, but they heard others call her Tammy. The girl was later identified as Linda Gale Bradshaw, but there was some question as to whether the identification was correct. According to news articles on this case, which can be viewed here and here, the identification was made using only a fingerprint comparison. The fingerprint of Linda was lifted from a photo album found at her parents' home. When Bradshaw's parents first learned of the unidentified body, they had doubts and requested to view the corpse to determine whether or not it was their daughter. Their request was declined, and police showed them a photograph of a deceased woman who, according to them, was not their daughter. They claimed they were later shown a different photo of a different deceased female, whom they also doubted was their daughter. Linda's parents strongly believed that Linda's boyfriend was responsible for her disappearance and could not connect her to the 2 men accused of killing Jane Doe and burning her body. The 2 men were convicted of her murder, however, and sentenced to death despite her family's objections. Their convictions were later overturned. Because one of these men was affiliated with a motorcycle club, Earl Bramblett pointed out that he'd heard that Tammy and Angela had broken out of a juvenile detention center with the help of bikers and run off to Florida. He stated that Tammy had told him that she planned to run away to Florida. Therefore, he claims that this victim was misidentified and was actually Tammy Akers. There was a point in the 1990s where Tammy's brother was able to gain access to the home where the Brambletts had lived at the time of their disappearance, with permission from the new owners. Tammy's brother discovered that a portion of the basement, in the back, had been closed off from the rest of the basement with a stone wall. The area that had been closed off was now only accessible through a narrow opening in the floor of the master bedroom closet above. Someone would need to be lowered through a hole to access this area. This area also contained the laundry chute, and Tammy's family could come up with no logical reason to block this section off, unless the bodies of Angela and Tammy were possibly buried in the dirt floor walls there. Tammy's sister recalls being in that basement before, right when the house was built, and the basement was open, with no inner walls. The owners of the property at that time were not willing to have it dug up. Someone who claims to have been a child living in the home in the 1990s recalls cadaver dogs coming to search the property. The family dug around some with a shovel as well, but it wasn't possible to dismantle the concrete basement walls without causing significant damage to the house. This family no longer lives there, but the then child recalled 2 bizarre concrete slabs in the basement, which were described as coffin-sized. A lengthy narrative by Bramblett, in which he describes how he believes he was framed for the murders, can be found here. Tammy and Angela's disappearances are mentioned as well. Although this doesn't seem too likely of a theory, it's been pointed out that a girl who was photographed by serial killer Rodney Alcala bears a strong resemblance to Angela Rader. Rodney Alcala, also known as the dating game killer after appearing on an episode of the game show, was mostly active in Southern California. He is known to have committed offenses in New York and New Hampshire, but I am unaware of any states in the South that he is linked to. Rodney Alcala lured women by promising them modeling sessions. Once he was apprehended, law enforcement found a stash of photographs in his possession and publicized them in an attempt to identify the subjects of them. It's worth noting that several individuals came forward and identified themselves. Therefore, not all of the photos depict victims. In 1997, WTBJ News ran a story on their disappearance, and it referred to an unknown third girl who had been at Tammy's home the night before the girls vanished from school. According to Tammy's mother, Tammy and Angela spoke on the phone, likely in the unknown girl's presence, and thought she might have knowledge of Tammy and Angela's plans.
Number 5.
Theresa Lynn Rhodes, age 13, disappeared from Greensburg, Pennsylvania on September 27, 1975. Theresa had told her mother she was spending the day shopping at the mall with a friend, Linda Perry, who was 16. She departed her family's residence at 11 a.m. and never returned. Theresa's mother worked nights and became aware of Theresa's disappearance the following morning. She immediately contacted another one of her daughters in the hopes that Theresa had spent the night at her home. She hadn't. Theresa's family contacted police the following morning but were told to wait until the following day to file a report because the police chief was in the middle of a cookout for his daughter's birthday. The family did report her missing the next day, but precious time had been lost. Linda Perry later stated that she and Theresa had gone to a party house on Bell Way in Greensburg, which was owned by a pedophile and friend of former police officer Leroy Bradford Smith. Smith was later convicted of conspiracy to commit murder for hire. The intended victim was an environmental worker who had interfered with an acquaintance's landfill business. Theresa had been associating with Smith in the time leading up to her disappearance, though her family was not aware of this until after her disappearance. The party house was reported to be where the Westmoreland Transit Authority building now sits, which is at 41 Bell Way. I am not sure if the address of the party house was the same. Leroy Smith is now deceased. In subsequent interviews, Linda Perry has claimed that she left the party house with a man at 6 p.m. on the night of Theresa's disappearance, leaving Theresa at the party house with unknown individuals. She has later claimed that Theresa could be found at multiple locations, including St. Clair Park in Greensburg, Greengate Mall, and Shenley Park in Pittsburgh. Searches of these areas turned up no sign of Theresa. Authorities believe that Linda had been threatened. While Leroy Smith has remained a person of interest, as well as the pedophile who owned the party house, in a more recent interview with a detective and friend of the Rhodes family, he has stated that he believes 3 actors took advantage of her that night. Someone has to know what happened to Theresa. I am sure Linda Perry does. My own opinion is that she was very lucky that she made it home that night, and while I do not know Theresa or any of her family, my hunch is that had it been the other way around, Theresa would have done anything she could to see that Linda was found, and that her family would not have to suffer for over 40 years with not knowing what happened to their daughter and sister. Linda, if you happen to see this, there are plenty of ways to give information anonymously. You weren't the only one there, you aren't the only one who knows. It has been too long, please come forward. Theresa was a student at the now-defunct St. Paul Middle School at the time of her disappearance. She was in 8th grade. She enjoyed cooking and baking, especially around the holidays. I hope Theresa can be found soon.